So something happened to me this past weekend that's never happened to me before. I was invited to a press event. Urban Games flew me out to New York City, put me up in a hotel, transported me in this vehicle here, which I guess is an old trolley that's been converted to a bus. We drove, and by we, I mean myself and like a dozen other people, like a dozen other content creators and journalists and things like that. We're all driven up to like this old train station that's been converted to a restaurant now. They had generators set up in this building because the electrical was not sufficient to power all of the PCs that were set up there. Here's a brief little clip at what it looks like in there. And we had a bunch of people. We had City Planner Plays was there. We had Squirrel there. Colonel Failure was there. Of course, he's associated with the game. I met people that I hadn't met before. You know, obviously everybody I haven't met before, but like I haven't met Ciniac. I hadn't been introduced to Tacticat before. All these people are awesome, and being around that environment was something that I just didn't have any experience with. I'm not really a recluse, but like I'm an older guy with a family and kids, and I got that whole traditional lifestyle going. So going to events like this and being in that environment was just like outside my comfort zone initially, and I'm so glad I went, and I'm humbled and thankful for Urban Games for bringing me out there so that I can get a hands-on look at their new game, Transport Fever 3. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences there. I can't show you gameplay footage, not allowed to do that, but I do have footage that they've sent to me that I am allowed to show. So I'm going to be talking over that a little bit and trying to give you guys sort of a sneak preview of what I experienced. I am willing to answer any questions that I'm allowed to answer, so you can leave them down in the comment section and I'll try my best to do that. I was supposed to release this video yesterday, but my kids don't have school this entire week. Mid-winter break. It's a bunch of BS. My wife's got the salary job, I don't, so my work is just entirely disrupted, but I think I'm gonna manage to get this out by Thursday at least. You probably wanted to know more about the game and not less about me. I understand. So let's get started on that. And my first thing I'm gonna cover here about my experience with the game, and it's the feature that I'm most excited about because it's a really notable change that aggravated me about TF2 that is going to be completely fixed in TF3. Let me tell you about the changes they're making to cargo and how cargo is handled in Transport Fever 3. Picture this. For those of you who have experience with number 2, you've got your line set up, you've got your depots right next to your sources and everything, your trucks are moving in and out of there, and you've got this big stack of stuff just sitting there on the platform waiting to be picked up by a truck. And you've got this blue number in your interface showing you that you're overproducing or that you need more storage or you need more trucks to get rid of it. Then you have a truck come in to your depot you think is going to pick up stuff, but actually it's part of a different line. And all of that stuff that's sitting on the platform is earmarked. It's reserved for a different route, right? If you play TF2, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That is fixed. Some of you might say, well, fixed, it was never wrong. You just have to learn how to work it. Yes, I understand. And I understand why it is the way it is. I just hated it. And now you don't have to deal with it because Transport Fever 3 fixes that. So how it works in Transport Fever 3 is that goods are no longer earmarked for specific destinations. If you've got the production capacity and they're deliverable, trucks, trains, planes, whatever, they can pick that stuff up and take it where they need to go, okay? But the catch is you must place the stuff in warehouses. Now, that doesn't seem like a very significant change, but it's going to trip up some of the experienced players in the game too. They're going to have to kind of recalibrate their head on how this works. I got tripped up by it when I tried to set up a run with just some woodcutters and logging and tried to move things from one destination to another to set up a stage for Woodstock. Talk about that in a second. And while I was trying to set that up, it wasn't running, and I was like, why isn't this happening? And I remembered with my palm to my forehead, oh right, warehouses are a thing, and I needed to put a warehouse in the catchment areas. If you don't have warehouses in your catchment zones, they won't produce anything. But no longer will you have to deal with a big stockpile of stuff just sitting there, overflowing, wasting production, and having vehicles not take it, even though that's the stuff they need to take, because it's earmarked for something else. You don't have to deal with that anymore, and that is my favorite change in Transport Fever 3. I love it. There is also one other downside, or at least maybe not a downside, but it's a different way of thinking. Because it's not earmarking goods anymore, you're not getting paid for delivering it to the warehouse. Okay, so in Transport Fever 2, you had vehicles, you'd set up multiple lines of vehicles moving things from one place to another, and you would get paid for that based on distance. In this game, that doesn't happen. You get paid when it gets delivered to the customer. So along the step of the way, it doesn't matter how much stuff you shove into a warehouse. You're not getting paid to shove things into a warehouse. You're getting paid to deliver it to the customer. There's a bunch of different resources now. There's way more resources in TF3 than there were in 2. There's like over 300 different vehicles to choose from and stuff now, including helicopters. In the middle of the event, I had to stop playing and head on out to a helicopter tour that Urban Games had organized with branded helicopters for their game. So that was pretty sick. I got put in a helicopter with Philip from City Planner Plays. I rode with Squirrel and a couple of other people, and the experience was pretty surreal. I got to sit in the co-pilot seat, so I had, I think, the best view in the house. I got to see the controls and everything, and yeah, just a really genuinely cool experience. I do get a little bit of motion sickness though, so while my view was great, I am actually happy that I was able to land when we did. There's a lot to like here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about things I like. One of the things I like also is the traffic management function that's been put into the game, or traffic features, management features that have been placed into the game. You can tweak intersections by controlling which lanes are permitted to go in which direction, including making dedicated lefts and even U-turns. So this is done through managing the phases in your lights, as well as managing where certain lanes can route to. And it was game changer. I had one route where I put two roads together, and the cars in the far right lane were allowed to come in and turn left. They were able to cross 5 lines of traffic to turn left. That was just the default thing. And I said, you know what? I don't think that should be a thing. I think they should be allowed to keep going right. And the really great part about that was part of the phasing and the lights and how they were changing, which now you can control. It wasn't allowing the go straight to happen when left turns need to be made. And this is a 3-way intersection, so there's no 4-way traffic here. So when there's a left turn happening, they should be able to keep going straight, and the game didn't have that by default. I was able to really quickly go in with a couple of clicks and reroute things and change the phasing how I wanted, and that made traffic smoother. I think there's a lot of situations in this game where you're going to love this, and if you want to visualize kind of what it looks like, there should be some stuff on screen for you to see this at least. But in case I don't have that footage, because I haven't actually downloaded it yet, I'm recording this while it downloads. Think of it like the traffic president, or whatever that mod is called for City Skylines. It's similar to that. I don't think it's quite as deep as that, but it's similar to that in how it works. So if you like that mod, you're gonna like this system too. One of the things that's changing about Transport Fever now is that Urban Games is self-publishing Transport Fever 3. And that opens up a lot of doors for them. It gives them a lot more flexibility because they no longer have a publisher that's, you know, breathing down their neck trying to get them to release the game sooner. I'm not saying that TF2 had that. I don't know that, but there's a lot of instances where games are released half-baked or they're not quite ready yet because publishers put too much pressure on the development team. And in this case, this game is simply releasing when it's ready. That's the release date, when it's ready. And they can take their time with it, and they can do it right without having that pressure of that because they're self-publishing. And one of the things that they expressed in their opening speech to us and their opening presentation to us was that they were really taking the time to listen to a lot of community feedback and take additional risks. And part of being able to do that is not having another entity, another company telling you what they want you to do, right? You have full control. You can take your time and do those types of things. So at this event, I was able to kind of experience that whole getting community feedback element in person because I'm right there. Let me give you an example. One of the features I love about TF2 is the idea of being able to draw roads. And when you draw roads, you get this confirmation click, this extra click where you're like, are you sure you want to do it? I like that because it allows me to really draw my roads out, and then I get to back up and visualize how it is before I do it. And I feel like there's a confirmation there, so I can't accidentally make a mistake because it's expensive. A lot of stuff is expensive, especially in the early game. You don't want to be wasting money. And in this game, that doesn't happen. There's no confirmation. You build the road instantly. I wasn't really sure if there was a setting or there was a way to do it. So I happened to have the lead developer of the game just happened to be standing right to my left at the time. And he was coming over to like check my experience with it and ask me questions and stuff. And I took that opportunity to express that to him. And I wanted to know if it was possible to bring that back. He expressed that it was done this way because it's more streamlined, it's quicker, but I like it the other way. And I've had people in my Discord express that they like it the other way too. And so I expressed that to him, and it took him 30 seconds. He sat down, changed some files, like made a couple of line edits, and boom, it was in the game with like checkboxes that looked like the new UI and everything. So it's not in the game, at least from what I can tell, by default, but I have expressed that to them, and I'm really hoping they take it and say, okay, fine, we'll give you an option in the settings to turn that back on. And that would be really great. I hope it. But even if they don't do it, modding support is definitely planned, and it's definitely a big thing that they're considering while they're building this. Because of how fast he was able to do that, I have no doubt that modders would be able to turn that back on if they want to. So community feedback, being able to be flexible, it's all something that these guys are considering, and it was a really good sign to see that. Another thing I like about Transport Fever 3, and this was more of what the devs expressed during the day. I haven't really had enough time in the game to see it for myself, but the devs explained that cities now take on a character and grow depending on what you deliver. So this means that each of your cities might end up being somewhat unique instead of mostly looking all the same as they did in Transport Fever 2. So for example, cities grow much larger in this game and vary in their look and progression, depending on what you give them. So there's a variety of goods requested, there's a lot more variety of goods than in Transport Fever 2. But if you only deliver a certain type of goods, so let's say you only deliver a bunch of industrial supplies to a city that wanted a whole bunch of stuff, the city will still grow, but it's going to grow in its aesthetic is going to look more industrial. You're going to get a much higher, denser industrial presence in that city because that is what that's what you fed, right? You fed the industrial beast, and you're going to get an industrial beast. I'm hoping that means that we can maybe not specialize cities all that much, but because it's not really that kind of game, but we're going to at least have a variety of looks. Each city will kind of be a little bit more unique instead of being very similar in its look and appearance like it is in TF2. And the other thing that I felt was really memorable about my experience in talking with them was their attitude about progression, and specifically how they felt about the late game. In almost every game I've played that are like Transport Fever, there's a point in the game where, and I'm sure you can agree with this, there's a point in the game where money just stops mattering. You can snowball so many games where you make so much money that it just doesn't matter anymore. And the projects that you take on and the different types of things that you try to set up in the game now are really just about what you want to do. It's not about what you have to do, or you're not really working towards a goal in the game anymore, right? And in Transport Fever 2 was no different. There's a point in that game where you are making so much money now that there's just really no way to lose. You just win. It's GG. And anything you do from this point is purely for your own creativity, and that's it. For me, I like a challenge. I like to always have some kind of goal that I'm reaching out for, whether it's defined by myself or the game. And in this case, the devs' attitude towards the mid-game and late game is that it shouldn't really be all about money. So they've introduced new types of progression in the game. They've introduced a leveling system for your business, including working through a variety of ranks. And as you level up and get new ranks, you'll unlock certain bonuses and enhancements to your business. Some of these bonuses and abilities are actually pretty cool, like the ability to prospect for resources that don't yet exist, discover things that are not yet on the map. I don't know if there is a specific like specialization where you can only find certain things that you're specialized in, or you have to, invest in a certain industry to be able to go there. But that type of progression system sounds fantastic because it means I can work towards goals, and I can have a goal that says I want to be, I want to reach tycoon, and I want to specialize in this, and I want to grow this industry specifically. And now I have metrics that I can weigh my progress in that aren't tied to my funding. Along with the bonuses, you can now also earn perks by building landmarks within cities to grant bonuses in those regions as well. Now keep in mind though that you got to earn these. They're not just given to you, they're fairly rare. You can't build all of them, and you're going to have to work for it a little bit. For example, building certain monuments will take a lot of resources you have to deliver to that location in order to build it. But they provide really great bonuses, especially if you're strategic in your placement to take advantage of the specific benefits that they offer. Another really cool feature that you likely already can see from the footage is offshore industries and just a variety of new industries in general. Like there's shrimp now. You want to be Bubba Gump Shrimp? Get yourself a shrimp boat, get out there and get that. We actually get a chance to experience these new things with the new campaign missions coming in Transport Fever 3, which features, at least for what we could see at the event, 8 story missions that carry the player through progressively more challenging scenarios, allowing new players to be introduced to the core gameplay and advanced systems in a progression that they can follow with a story. I had enough experience in the game to really not get a whole lot out of mission 1 because it's very basic. Like I'm talking clicking alligators and learning how WASD works and, you know, placing just basic buildings and stuff. But you are introduced to the game, if as a new player, some important concepts that you're just going to need to know. And it does this by having you try to repair New Orleans after a big storm blows through there right before Mardi Gras. So it's up to you to save Mardi Gras. And I think that's pretty interesting. The second campaign we got to experience took us to a Woodstock-like environment just outside of city. We had a big concert that was going to happen there, and you had to help build up a camp. That means providing wood for them to build a stage and providing food in there. We even had to build toilets and find a way to transport the waste from the toilets. Yep. Big industry pooper scoopers. That's what we were. But seriously though, there's an event there and it walks you through the basics, but also the second campaign we go through, that was number 4 in the list. So there's a lot of concepts that they didn't explain there. And that's one that we would only really do really well. And if we had at least a little bit of experience in that, which was kind of nice. They were there standing by, ready to help any new players with that campaign. And even I had a little bit of trouble with it. That was the warehouse thing I was talking about where I couldn't deliver wood. I was like, why aren't they building the stage? It was in that campaign. I think experienced players will probably get limited enjoyment from the campaign, and that makes sense because they already have all of the knowledge that the campaign is designed to teach. So you guys will probably be working in sandbox mode more often than not. Sandbox mode includes 4 biomes now. You have the typical temperate, dry, you have tropical. Those were all in TF2, but now we also have a subarctic, which just looks beautiful, by the way. To see the game in 4K on a big OLED screen is going to be chef's kiss because they have new ways of generating their maps and they have new technology behind the visuals and it just looks awesome. I don't have the technical knowledge to speak to exactly what they're doing, but it looks good. They told me a whole bunch of things that I've already forgotten, but I guess I gotta tell you, it looks better than what TF2 does. And I think TF2 looks pretty good, but this looked better. One thing I did get to experience though is the new boosting mechanic. And for this, I used the new vehicle type brought into the game, helicopters. In my time with the game, I established a very simple route using an oil rig out in the middle of the water. Boats could come by this rig to pick up the product and ship it out, and the rig produced at 100%. That's its baseline. However, by connecting a helicopter route and bringing in workers to that industry, which is a totally optional thing that you don't have to do and you don't get paid for doing, I got a significant boost in the performance of that oil rig, up 120%, at least in the difficulty that I was playing with at the time. So I had, in addition to its 100% bonus, a significant bonus on top of that just because I brought workers to that location. And that exists for a lot of different industries in the game. So for example, you can bring fertilizer to farms. The thing is, you do not get paid for bringing the people to those destinations. You don't get paid for bringing things like fertilizer to farms. Those things are entirely out of your pocket. Those lines that you're making will always operate as a loss. However, the boosts that you get from doing it to the industries, if you're actually shipping a good amount of stuff out of those industries, will more than pay for it. And that's the general idea behind boosts. It provides you with a flexible means of really focusing in on certain industries if you want to, and bringing workers to things that are offshore is a great way to do that with helicopters. You know, when I was first introduced to this game, I wasn't really sure of the point of helicopters. I was a helicopter skeptic, you know? I mean, I'm looking at an industry game where the entire point is moving people and product as efficiently as possible to maximize profit. why would I use helicopters? In what situation would I ever use helicopters? They are slower than planes and have way less cargo space than anything else. I mean, in general, helicopter may be the worst vehicle to haul cargo with on dedicated lines to and from a location if it's a well-planned system. So I was like, why in the world are they introducing helicopters? So with the lead developer right there off my left shoulder, I just flat out told him that. What I just told you, I just flat out told him that and asked him straight up, why helicopters? He gave me two reasons. One, they're very flexible and very quick at moving small amounts of stuff to very specific areas. The maps are quite large, so you're gonna have lots of remote areas that maybe you don't wanna set up a huge amount of infrastructure for, and maybe you want to bring, for example, 10 workers to a remote location to boost the production on that thing. Helicopter is a good way to do that. You can go over mountains. You don't need to, set up a whole bunch of roads or rails and things to do that. So for that case, it makes sense. The second reason for helicopters, and this is a direct quote, because they're really cool. Hey, I love it. Sometimes that is a good enough reason. Transport Fever 3, I think there's a lot to love here in this game based on my experience with it. Regardless of the reasons for these changes, I think there's a lot to love here. There's a lot of games that have come out recently, especially in the strategy and creative game space, where the next edition of the game's saga or whatever is just not as good as the original, or not as good as the previous version, right? We've had the Kerbal Space Program 2 is something that comes to mind from my channel's history, right? Where people just play the original because the second was just half-baked. It didn't have all the things it needed to have, right? That situation happens far too often in games now. In the case of Transport Fever 3, from my limited time experience with the game, on the trust that I've built anyway, from me to you, I don't see that happening with Transport Fever 3. I'm not worried about it, I should say, happening with Transport Fever 3. I can only tell you how I feel based on my limited experience with it. I've only played it for like 3 hours, okay? So take that with the biggest grain of salt that you want. But it looked polished, it worked really well, it ran at a great frame rate. Unfortunately, that's all I really can say because they didn't give us a release date or any other information that I can go on to give you more hope that it will be ready soon. But all I can tell you is that it feels very close to ready for me. And so I'm hoping that it's right around the corner. So that's my limited look at Transport Fever 3. I'm sorry I couldn't give you gameplay footage, but hopefully the small bit I could give you at least keeps you interested. And I can tell you I definitely plan to cover Transport Fever 3 when it releases later this year. So be sure to subscribe if you don't already have a really awesome YouTube channel to watch with this game already. Creators that I met on this trip, you guys are awesome. It was really cool meeting you. I got out of my shell a little bit because I don't really get a chance to meet new people, especially those that are in my industry. So that was very cool. Thank you for watching. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.